Oh, yeah. Everybody's favorite lonely Friday night activity. This show is here. Sam Roberts Now, the loneliest name in late night. The loneliest show on the internet. And here we are. And what a show we've got for you tonight. Thank you all for being here. Of course, right now, just going through. I always celebrate whenever I can get through with no technical difficulties. And I feel like everything has been smooth so far. It's a very good omen. If I can get things started, then we're good. I appreciate you. I see you in the chat already. I see you already hitting the like button. As a matter of fact, some of you are even going so far as to smash the like button, which you know that I appreciate. I hope you're subscribed to the channel. I hope the bell is turned on. And no, Doug Bell will not be here tonight. There was a teaser that went out about this evening's show that Hot Dog is not here. And so there's a guest co-host on tonight's show, and I'll tell you who that is in just a second. Tonight is a very special show. You know, a couple of weeks ago, when Spiral came out, we did a show here on Sam Roberts Now breaking down every Saw movie in the entire franchise. What is it, 10 of them? All of them, and trying to figure out, and this is what's important, when you have these franchises, the only reason to have these franchises, cinematic universes, whatever you want to call them, with so many different parts is that there should be some mythology that runs throughout all of them. They should all come together. Each one of them should tell a little micro story, but there should be one bigger macro story that you get if you see every single one of these movies. And so we've done that with Friday the 13th. We've done that with Saw. And today, we're here to figure out the Conjuring universe. We're here to break down the entire Conjuring cinematic universe. And I say cinematic universe because it's not just the Conjuring 1, the Conjuring 2, the Conjuring 3. There are 8 movies. Some people think 7, but I stand by the fact that there are 8 that fall within the cinematic universe of the Conjuring. Now, Hot Dog doesn't know anything about anything, so he can get away with not knowing about whatever we're talking about because he doesn't know. There's nothing that he does know. But if I'm going to get a guest host to come in, we need somebody that's 10 times the entertainer that Hot Dog is and somebody that shares the same love of horror movies that I do. So here on the Not Sam Thunderdome, on the big screen, ladies and gentlemen, NXT superstar, Drake Maverick. Drake, how are we doing, man?
Thank you for having me. I'm good. Thank you for choosing the only horror universe I have minimal clue about. So this is going to really embarrass me after a wonderful intro. I've only seen the 3 Conjuring movies, which you just buried. There's not just 3 Conjuring movies. Well, great. They're the only ones I've seen. Yeah. But I'm in agreement with you. There is 8 in this universe.
Yes, there is and don't worry about that. We'll get to the bottom of all that tonight, and hopefully you'll gain a greater appreciation for what's happening in these 3 movies through our conversation, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I get where you feel like, well, I don't need to see all these movies, but if you want to answer, like sometimes with these cinematic universes, they go like, well, this will answer every question. But you go, does every question need to be answered? Like, do we not have enough information? And sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. But I thought still we should go over it. Now, Drake Maverick, my thought here, because there's 2 ways of doing this, right? The Conjuring cinematic universe is a very complicated one because it's full of sequels and prequels and the timeline doesn't match up with anything. So some people like to break it down by timeline. But for me, I feel like we should break it down by release date. Because it's not like the writers of these movies knew that there were going to be 8 movies to begin with and that they're writing backwards and stuff. Like we know that when these movies get written, they're like, oh, well, what if we did a prequel? And they're just thinking of it just then. So I thought that we would go through the movies in the order in which they were released in theaters. And then we end up, doubling back and going like, oh, you had this question from earlier. Well, guess what? I thought that would be the way to do it. Does that make sense?
I agree with you 100%. And I had to go back and watch the original Conjuring movie because I remember seeing it when it first came out, but I did need a refresher. I don't know why I needed that refresher because I'm pretty good at remembering every film I've ever watched. But it was like, I don't know if it was like in the 2010s, like horror movie. There was dropping so many horror movies. It was just like, they were all blending in together. Like you had Hereditary, The Conjuring, the Annabelle, and I was kind of like, I'm not gonna follow it.
yeah. Especially like Insidious came out right around the same time as The Conjuring,
right? Yeah,
and
exactly.
also stars Patrick Wilson, and you're sitting there going like, but is he the same? No, different characters. Just he looks exactly the same, and you're like, I think
I saw the first of everything,
Yeah.
and then I just was like, yeah, I'm not, and like even Sinister. I watched Sinister as well. And I'm like, these are all the same. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want any more.
I got
I
it.
refuse to watch. I've refused to watch Sinister 2 because I'm like, I really enjoyed that first one. So
Right.
I'm like, I heard the second one's bad, so I'm just like, you know what, not bothering.
Just skip it. And you're like, I understand. There's ghosts, and they scare you when you're really not expecting to get scared. That's kind of
Right.
That's kind of the thing. But for me, I mean,
Yes.
I feel like The Conjuring is like, as far as like the 2010s go and like the influx of all those ghost movies, like that is the sort of quintessential one. I feel like that's the godfather of all this. I think that the Conjuring is an extremely influential movie in the genre.
Yes. What I appreciate about The Conjuring and the 3 that I've watched is that when there's a jump scare,
Yeah.
it's actually a scare. It's not like jump scare. Oh, it was a mouse. Like it's not a false. It's always no. There's something to be completely petrified of here. It's right there in front of you. Or they will not have the music in check with it, and there's just something coming towards you, and you're like, wait, and then it just gives it to you, and you're like, I did appreciate that because that is what was different about it. Because there was a period in the 2010s of like, here's a jump scare, here's a jump scare, here's a jump scare for absolutely everything, and there was nothing, and it's like, come on.
Yeah.
It's human reaction to like loud noise. Loud noise. That's going to happen with anything. You could do that in romance films if you wanted to, but
it would be like
a normal reaction.
If somebody was sitting there just like stabbing you with needles while you were watching the movie, and they were like, well, you were reacting, right? And you're like, well, no, it's the needles. It had nothing to do. Yes. Like there's such a huge difference between startling and actually scaring. Like if you get startled a bunch of times, you just took advantage of the fact that this is what we do as human beings. But if you get scared, like that's when you're sitting in your bed and it's 2:00 in the morning and you think that like an Annabelle doll has come to life or something like that. That's when I feel like it's been effective.
Like there's nothing scarier than a slow head tilting doll. There's just nothing scarier.
Yeah. Well, okay. All right. So let's get started. Okay.
Let's go.
Let's go. The Conjuring 1. This is where it all begins. It comes out in 2013. It takes place in 1971. This to me, and I'm glad that you went back and watched it because I went back and watched it too. And I'm going to get a lot wrong, I'm sure, because I tried to pack in 8 movies into like 3 days and just write down as many things as I could. So, things are going to get muddled, but still, we'll give you a pretty good analysis, I think. I went back and it wasn't like I didn't realize that the Warrens were really only half of this movie. Like I think that within this movie, they realized how much people liked seeing the cinematic portrayal of the Warrens. And like in Conjuring 2, they were more important. And in Conjuring 3, they were like the whole movie. But in Conjuring 1, it's a pretty basic movie. It's a haunted house movie. You watch this family get haunted, and eventually they bring in Ed and Lorraine Warren, who, by the way, if you Google Ed and Lorraine Warren, God bless them, but the cinematic versions are like, they weren't like foxy ghost hunters. You know what I mean? And I feel like in the Conjuring 1, it's like, oh, we got some extremely attractive demonologists here. And it's like, no, I mean, in real life, they were just demonologists.
Yeah, in real life, they look like exactly you'd picture a demonologist.
Right.
Exactly.
So we do, though, I feel like they try to keep this a little bit more somewhat in reality, right? In the real world, where it's like they explain that Lorraine Warren, the wife, is very, very affected by all this stuff, that Ed doesn't necessarily like her doing the demonology stuff anymore because it takes something away from her every time that she does it. She has these amazing powers of ESP. The house is super haunted, though. The house is like ridiculous haunted. Chairs are being flung around, and it sets up what every movie in this series is basically about, which is there's a demon in the house for some reason, different reasons throughout all the films, but in this one, there's a demon in the house. This demon owned the house. She hung herself, but before she hung herself from the tree, she said, anybody that gets on my property, I'm basically going to haunt the shit out of them. And this family bought the house. They didn't know. The realtor didn't tell them, hey, just so you know, a lady hung herself from this tree and pledged her soul to Satan and said she was going to haunt everybody who's in this house. So they didn't know that. When the guy from Office Space moved in, he had no clue. But that's what's happened. The family moves into the house, and they get haunted like crazy to the point that eventually the mother does get possessed by the demon. The demon is able to get into the mother, and she gets possessed. When you rewatched it, were you as surprised as I was as to how much attention was being paid to the family as opposed to the Warrens?
I remember it being like that.
Yeah.
And I actually really liked it because it was very, if you remember The Exorcist, you didn't really have much of Max von Sydow until the end of the film.
Right.
So it was very, very akin to that. Like, and I think that really sets the tone of you care about the family, so you want them to, have this problem solved so they can live their life on this property that is probably worth $3 million, but we got it for $50,000. What are the odds? It's possessed.
Yeah.
But like, I did like that because then when the Warrens came in, there wasn't too much with them, which in later films you'll find that there is too much, in my opinion. But it's like I enjoyed. Here's a story. Here come the Ghostbusters, and no Ecto-1 or anything like that. But like it's just I cared about the family and I cared about the mother. And when the mother was possessed, I was very upset, and I wanted the problem solved, basically. So it was,
perfect story. That's the way you're supposed to do it. Although I do think though that they did have in mind, like, okay, let's see if we can get this working to the point that we can have multiple movies, because 3 elements. Number 1, the cold open of the movie is Annabelle, right? So the cold open of the movie is them talking about Annabelle. Now, that's not the case that they're talking about in the movie. So, and there's actually interesting stuff going on. The cold open is Annabelle. Then once they open and you meet the Warrens for the first time, they're giving a college lecture, and they're showing one of the exorcisms that they were involved in, which, by the way, Drake Maverick, you may not know, but that exorcism does come back later in the cinematic universe. We'll get there. Yes.
Okay.
And then the movie ends with not only the shot of the room that the Warrens have. They have a room in their house. And this is real life. The real life Warrens did have this room in their house where they have haunted items from every sort of demonology, exorcism thing that they did. They would always take home the item that was haunted and they would put it in their shelf in this room that was blessed by a priest. Happened in real life, happened in the film. I feel like when they show you that room and they put an item on the shelf, what they're basically telling you is count the items that are in this room. That's how many movies that we have potentially. That's
we have these in the can.
Yes,
I love that room.
Yes,
I love it. It's exactly what you just described because there's so much going on, and you're always looking in the background like, is something going to move?
Right.
Is Annabelle going to do anything?
Right.
It's really good.
Right.
It's like anything could be a story. And you're just looking for things of what it could be. I think that's a wonderful touch, a really wonderful touch.
Yeah, I think it's great. And then after they show the room, they also do. There's so many. This whole universe is filled with cute little lines that if you know, like a little tip of the hat to. Oh, we know what that means when they go like, oh, I heard about this house in Amityville that we better go check out. And you're like, oh, it's the Amityville horror.
Yeah,
I know what they're talking about, right? So you're sitting there as a movie viewer going like, okay, are we going to Annabelle? Are we going to the Amityville horror, but from a different perspective? Where are we going next, right? And where this cinematic universe goes next is a year later, Annabelle comes out. Now, Annabelle is a prequel to The Conjuring. Annabelle, most of the movie takes place in 1967. So it's basically, it starts with the same scene that The Conjuring 1 starts with, where we're meeting Annabelle and it's this haunted doll and these nurses are there and they're going like, I don't know what to do about this doll. And then the credits hit and it rolls back to kind of what we think is the creation of Annabelle. Now it turns out, Drake, that the creation of Annabelle that we see is not actually the creation of Annabelle, because this is not Annabelle Creation. This is just Annabelle Creation.
Annabelle.
Yeah, that happens later, right? So in Annabelle, here's what happens. The movie opens, this young, good-looking couple, they're sitting there, the lady is pregnant, and they're watching on the news. The Manson murders are happening there in Los Angeles, where they live, and they can't believe it. Apparently, there were in this cinematic universe, the Manson murders existed, but then there were also a whole bunch of other cults that were also doing murders that were very, very similar to Manson. I kind of watch it going like, I don't know if I was going to do like a cult, like a young hippie cult murder thing. I don't know that I would acknowledge that Manson existed, because then it's like, so you have multiple cults all doing the same crimes at the same time. Like, I don't necessarily know that I get that. But what happens is they go and they kill the neighbors of this family that we've met. The next door neighbors of the family that we met, they get murdered by the woman and the man from this cult. The young couple, they wake up, they hear the screams, they can't believe it. They turn their lights on, and these hippies, these murderous hippies, come to the young couple's house. And the pregnant lady gets stabbed in her stomach with the knife. You go, oh, please, God, no, you can't. It's very difficult to watch, too. I always kind of cringe at stuff like that, because it's like, I don't even know from an entertainment perspective if I can. But let's see where this goes. And then the husband comes in. He starts, beating up the guy the hippie guy that's in there with them. And eventually the cops get there. They shoot the male attacker, and they find the female attacker. The female attacker has gone into the nursery that has been created for this for the expected child. In the nursery, there is a doll. The expectant mother is a doll collector. The husband was able to find her an antique doll that would be great for her collection. For some reason, this hippie girl went into the room, grabbed this old antique doll, and held it as she slit her own throat. And as she's holding it, you look down, and guess what doll it is, Drake? Can you guess?
Does it begin with A?
Yep. Yeah.
All right, it's Chucky. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Annabelle.
Yes, it is. It is It is the titular doll, Annabelle, and the blood seeping out of this woman's neck drips into the little doll eye socket of Annabelle.
Of course it does. Why wouldn't it?
I mean, where else is it going to go, right?
Question.
I
don't know where it's going to go.
Okay.
Is this gypsy woman who has bled onto this doll, does she have a gypsy curse?
Well, we get to know a little bit about her in a movie later on.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So many questions.
we don't really find that out in this movie. We get to learn about that a little later when we actually do a prequel to the prequel. But that's not this. This is just a prequel.
Annabelle Creation.
That's where it gets. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're picking up what I'm putting down. Yeah, that's where we're gonna take care of all that. So, as it turns out, the lady is fine. She gives birth to her child. The child is born healthy. It's all good.
After being stabbed.
After being stabbed in the side. Yeah, tough as nails, this baby. Tough as nails. Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. It was a scare for sure.
Okay.
But the baby was all good. Okay. So they throw out Annabelle, but for some reason it doesn't work. The woman, she puts some Jiffy Pop popcorn on the stove. Guess what? Accidentally burns the house to the ground. You can only assume that Annabelle had something to do with it, though. The idea is that the spirit is now in the house and has figured out a way to light the house on fire. Their whole house burns down. They have to move to an apartment building. And basically, what we watch throughout this film is there is a demon inside this Annabelle doll. And that demon, much like you talked about Chucky. What was Chucky's main goal on this planet?
To become human.
Exactly. He wanted to get his...
Again, yeah.
Yeah. And so this is what we want to do. If you're a demon, I mean, you don't want to be a doll, right? You want to be a person. So the whole movie is basically the doll trying to get the soul inside of the baby. Right?
Oh.
The doll is trying to possess the baby, and the mom has to protect the baby, and the mom thinks she's going crazy, but she's not going crazy because there really is a demon doll that lives in her house. You can see where people would think that she was nuts, but there really is a demon doll in her house.
And she can't get rid of it. Like, they throw it in the trash, won't go away.
Won't go away.
The original. Okay.
Yeah, won't go away. It won't go away.
Okay.
So now there is throughout the film, there is this librarian that they meet that is very helpful with explaining plot points throughout the movie. Like she somehow knows everything, and she's super good at explaining what's going on. Just a great voice of reason. And basically what we get to at the end is the mom is she gets the Annabelle doll, and she's ready to jump out the window and kill herself, but take the doll with her so that the doll leaves her baby alone. And the husband's like, I can't let you do that. It doesn't happen. The librarian grabs the doll, who had all the great plot points to explain to us. The librarian grabs the doll. She chucks herself out a window. She's dead. We think everything's good. The doll, I guess it goes from evidence to an antique store. And we see in like the post-credit scene, we see the doll ends up in an antique store. It's bought by an old lady who I think gives it to a family member, the nurses that we saw in the beginning of The Conjuring.
Right.
See?
It all makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, question about the librarian lady. Is it because the director of the film thinks we're stupid audience members and we need her? Or is it because she's one of those ones, a kangaroo? It's definitely the doll. You know what I mean? Is it one of those librarians, or unless there's different types of librarians?
No. I think it's a great
Is
question.
she Tony Todd from Final Destination? Where it's like,
Yeah. Yes.
I'll explain this is what the fuck's going on.
Yes.
I shouldn't know this, but I do.
It's
the benefits of the plot of this film.
It's exactly who it is. That's
Tony Todd.
That's a great. I wish they would make another Final Destination movie so we could break down all the Final Destinations. We'll get there at some point. But
wow.
Yes, because I love those too. Love them.
Me too.
Love them. But yeah, that's exactly what she's there for. It's sometimes, you got all these complicated ideas for a plot of a movie, and it becomes real difficult to figure out how to get the characters to explain all those great plot ideas. So instead, you just invent a character to just flat out say them. And, and then we're done. We don't have to worry about it anymore. We can get back to like dolls running around and stuff like that. There are a couple good scares. There's like one where it's like, instead of being like a real creepy ghost, like a ghost comes running full speed at her. And I'm sitting there going like, it's one thing if you're being stalked by like, Michael Myers, by like this slow moving thing. And it's scary because they won't leave. But you can keep avoiding them forever. When like ghosts can run full speed at you, like way faster than you can run, that's pretty terrifying.
Yeah, you got no chance.
No chance.
There's no chance at all.
No. So,
okay.
That's a little explanation to Annabelle. Next, we jump into the future. We go back to the 70s. Like I said, Conjuring 1 took place in 1971. We get to 2016's Conjuring 2. This is something that you're familiar with. And, interesting, and I love that it does this. The Conjuring 2 starts with the DeFeos, which is the Amityville horror house. So that little tip of the hat to the Amityville horror house at the end of Conjuring 1 does kind of pay off at the beginning of Conjuring 2.
Yeah.
It
kind of makes me wish that they make a Amityville horror film with the DeFeos that's more realistic than the the original or the Ryan Reynolds, but whichever one you prefer.
Right.
But, I'd like the DeFeos involved with the Amityville horror in some way. Maybe in between Amityville 3D and the other one. But,
Yeah. You would have to do like, it'd have to be like Conjuring 4. You just can't put Amityville in the title at all, just because there have been so many Amityville.
The Conjuring 4 would go into the Amityville house, or the DeFeo incident. I don't know.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
You know what it is without it being an Amityville film.
Yeah. No, I would too. I would love the injection of the Amityville horror story into the Conjuring universe, because right now we just see it on the peripheral, right? We see it as a thing that happened, but we didn't really get into it. Although it is the first time that we see the nun at the beginning of Conjuring 2, which we'll get a lot more information on that nun as well, by the way. I know you're sitting there going, what's the deal with this nun? Don't worry. I got all the answers about the nun, too. You don't have to worry about that at all.
Yeah, they might even make a movie about it.
Yeah, you don't know.
You never know.
Maybe a couple of them. Who knows?
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That was a terrifying nun. I've seen some scary-ass nuns. Like Sister Act 2 Back in the Habit had some scary-ass nuns. That was some nuns.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the most scariest nun I've seen.
For sure. And then even the painting, when they have the painting of the scary nun later in the film that's in the Warren's house. Yeah. Yeah, it creeps me out.
It doesn't do anything, but it's just absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like
now
horrible.
Conjuring 2, I mean, this must be right up your alley, because it's they should call it The Conjuring 2 Conjuring in London. It's like Home Alone. It's like Lost in New York. Now we're going to London.
Okay, so I got kind of confused with this, because at one point the film said it was in Nottingham, and this is based as the Enfield poltergeist story and everything. So after I watched this film, I went on a deep dive and looked at British documentaries on this and everything. So it was very strange, because it was and I mentioned it to you after I watched it. This reminds me of every in the United Kingdom that has an old pensioner living in a house because their wife or their husband have passed, and they're just living on their own. And then the old man just dies alone in his chair. Yeah. But this old fella in this one was and there was There's a lot of cranky old men in England. Trust me, because we're not happy about the weather at the best of times. But like when, you know what? If I'm gonna go, I don't mind. I don't mind being a cranky old man in the chair.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Yeah. I mean,
I'll haunt a few folk. Don't come in the house.
Yeah. What? So what did you think of that? Because that's not a conventional scare in horror movies like this. Like when we see the ghost, it's usually, I think that The Conjuring, what they do better than most other ghost movies is the way they use sound. The thumps and the slams and the, like, that stuff freaks me out.
Like the clapping.
Yeah. Oh,
the clapping.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's one thing we didn't point out. The scare of that first one was when that hand just comes out of nowhere and claps, and you're like, "Ah!"
Oh, and that's one of those scares too that you see in the trailer, and then even though you already saw it in the trailer, you see it in the movie, and it's still terrifying. Like,
I remember about the first one because the trailer spoiled so much.
Yeah.
So much. It didn't do it with this one. It didn't.
Yeah.
Which was good.
Yeah.
But I had never heard about this United Kingdom tale, by the way, because I'm not a very I've never delved deep into the paranormal or anything like that. But like, I never knew that this story existed until watching this film. So that's when I went on the deep dive of it. But,
Interesting.
But the noises in the walls, and and then look, something like that. Invite a friend over. Look, there's something going on in our house. What are you talking about? And then a chair just moves across the room. The best is the police. The old Bill basically went, "Yeah, we can't really deal with that. Sorry, better get someone else. Like we got no paperwork for the supernatural. What do we do?" Yeah, but, just nothing to do.
I don't know how to classify it. I don't know what you want me to tell you. It's not on the list of things that we cover.
They just couldn't. I don't know if it was a case of like they'd look stupid or it was they didn't. And that there was big, problems with this in regards to the children because everyone thought it was a prank.
Right.
Just nonstop pranks.
And they do that in the movie, right? Like this part of a big part of this movie is that the Warrens go over to London because the media is making this into a thing where they don't believe this family. This family is getting haunted. This time, instead of the house being haunted by a woman who hung herself and pledged her soul to Satan or whatever, this time it's an old man. And the old man, for some reason, I feel, maybe it's because of witches or something like that, I feel like an old female ghost is a little bit more conventional. And I do think it's a risk. Like, they literally have scenes where you just hear an old grumpy man saying, "Get out of my house." And like,
yes,
that's a real tightrope to walk. If that's not done perfectly, that can get cheesy fast.
Real quick.
Yeah. But I wasn't bothered by it though. I thought they did a good job with it. But the Warrens are there basically because this old man demon is haunting this family. These little girls are trying to sleep. The old man demon is picking them up, throwing them up in the air, chucking them from bed to bed. They don't know what the hell's going on. They got a room full of crosses. He's flipping them all upside down. It's remarkable how angry this old man ghost is that these people are in the house.
Yeah, he's a real grumpy old. This was the weirdest part for me, that there was tape recordings in the house from the press, I believe it was, or the police.
Yeah.
And they found one of the tape recorders that was. You got to remember that the children in the movie are still children. So as much as all this stuff's going on, they're still quite innocent and naive kids.
Right.
So they're still trying to do childish mischief while actually being completely terrorized by a ghost.
Yeah.
So in one of the tape recordings, they actually found the girls, the audio, because they left it on record, hearing them going, let's hide it. And they hide this tape recorder somewhere else where everyone's like, the ghost moved it. But that's when they were like accusing them of like, this isn't true.
Yeah, but it's like
they assumed it was a prank from all of it.
But it's also like little kids would just hide a tape recorder even if they were being haunted, right?
Yeah, because they just were still trying to be kids, even though this terrible things. They didn't realize the severity of it at their age, I don't believe. So
yeah.
I mean, who knows?
So this is happening in 2016. I do think that as I watched this movie that they were fully intending on doing a Nun movie, because not only does the nun show up in the beginning, but the terrifying nun also shows up like multiple times in the middle of the movie,
Right.
and in the Warrens' house. And this is also where you get a little more into the fact that the Warrens are not only dealing with other people's stuff, but they got to deal with their own stuff too. They're being haunted kind of all the time.
They got their own demons.
Yeah, which is tough.
Mm-hmm.
Which is tough to pull off. Yeah, I think that this was a fairly well done, traditional demon haunting a house movie. I don't think that they went super deep into anything, but I also don't think they really messed anything up. I think this is, if you're gonna watch a Conjuring movie, this is kind of exactly what you think of. I mean, I don't know if they needed to play London Calling when they got to the UK just to be like, oh, well, yeah, we're in London. London Calling is playing right now. It's like that.
Yeah, just letting you know, we're in England.
Yeah.
Just letting you know, there's Buckingham Palace, there's the Queen, that's all we are.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be like, if they're like, oh, there's something happening in New York, and they like show Times Square and start playing Sinatra. I'm like, I don't know if I need I don't know if I need all that. Like I got the location change, and it's not sort of, I mean, it's not actually 1977, right? If this movie came out in 1977, there might be some people going to the film like thrilled because I've never seen London before. This is an incredible thing, but but it comes out in 2016. You've at least seen Google images of London. Like it's not.
There was a hint of over the top Oliver Twist lingo. And hello, what do you mean? There's a ghost in your ass? What the bloody hell? Like, oh my god! Like, but.
Yeah, a lot of Cockney. A lot of Cockney.
Yeah, bless them, they tried.
Yeah. No, I think that was good. So coming off of Conjuring 2, the next movie that came out was the next year in 2017, and this movie we're gonna go back even further. This is now a prequel to all three of the movies that we've mentioned.
Oh boy.
So just to keep everybody up to speed, Conjuring 2 was a sequel to The Conjuring. Annabelle was a prequel to The Conjuring, and now we get to Annabelle Creation, which is a prequel to Annabelle, and therefore a prequel to also The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2. Now, I went into Annabelle Creation, I remember, very skeptical, because I said, I already know how Annabelle was created. The hippie chick slit her own throat and bled into the Annabelle doll. She was crazy enough to kill people. She's obviously some kind of demon lady, right? Serial killers are kind of like demons. I get it. However, I actually thought that this movie did a pretty good job of bringing all these pieces in and tying stuff together and making it make sense that wasn't actually the creation of Annabelle. So basically, we'll go all the way back into the 40s. At the beginning of this movie, where this guy, he lives out on a farm with his daughter and his wife, and he makes this Annabelle doll. He literally created, he's a toy maker, and it's the 40s, so it's not like you're just sculpting a prototype out of clay and then sending it to China to have it mass produced in a factory. He's literally woodworking and making all these great dolls, and he makes Annabelle. Now, I would question his skill level if he's making Annabelle, because even when Annabelle is not haunted, she's a hideous doll. I mean...
Oh, horrible.
Horrible.
So Geppetto has made this evil doll.
Precisely.
There we go.
Precisely. So...
And Geppetto had some horrible dolls in Pinocchio, so you never know.
Horrible. So...
Terrible.
So, right. So Geppetto makes the doll, and he makes Annabelle... And it's a beautiful thing for everybody. Now, what happens is it's the Geppetto and his wife and his young daughter. They have some car troubles. They got to pull over on the side of the road. They got to fix the car. And they're like, okay, we're fixing this tire. This dumb kid goes, oh, let me help. And runs out into the street only to get flattened by a truck, as kids tend to do when they run out into the street. It's like, what do you mean, help me out? First of all, you're like 6. What would you know about changing a tire in the 1940s? There's no way. There's no way you could have helped. And now we've got to deal with the fact that we just watched our daughter get flattened by a truck in the 1940s. I mean, it's terrible. Couldn't think of a worse scenario for these people, right?
Awful.
So now,
awful.
Now they're in a pretty vulnerable spot now, aren't they? There's a demon in their house. I forgot to mention that too. There's a demon. Yeah, I forgot to mention that too. There is indeed a demon in their house, and you got to question if the demon had something to do with, being like talking to the little girl and being like, you should definitely run out into the street right now. It's kind of like Pet Sematary, right? It's literally.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
It's literally Pet Sematary, because Pet Sematary is based on the fact that these parents are so overwhelmed with grief. The dad goes and even though they say, do not bring your kid back to life in that pet cemetery, don't do it. The animals go crazy. I can only imagine what it would do to a kid. But the parent's so overwhelmed with grief, he's going to do it. What happens is the demon visits these parents and goes, I've got a great idea for you guys. And the demon shows the parents their daughter is still alive. She's in her room. The parents see the daughter. And they're like, I'd love to have the daughter back. And the demon's like, well, obviously she got flattened by a truck. She can't come back. But what we could do, tell me if you like this idea, is I, for you, will put her soul in that Annabelle doll. Is that something you might be interested in? And they go, I love that idea. Yeah, that sounds terrific. Yes, demon, that sounds terrific. Let's set everything up for you. What they don't understand is the demon's a demon. It's like the scorpion story.
What's the demon want? What's the demon want in exchange? Is this what I'm getting at? Yeah.
Well, you know what happens? The demon tricks them. You know what they do on accident? They put the demon in the Annabelle doll. So now, well, because the demon wants to be in something. So the demon goes, I'll get in this Annabelle doll, and then I'll get my hands on some kids or something like that, and I'll be able to get into the kids, and I can live a fruitful life. So
phase one, be inside of a doll. Phase 2, phase 3, profit.
That's it. That's it. Okay. That's where the demon's going right now. Yes. Yeah.
He knows exactly what he's doing. Okay.
Exactly.
Why did he just possess somebody immediately?
Well, the kid had jumped in front of a truck, and I guess they didn't want to possess adults because.
So all these demons want to possess a child so they can grow up to be a demon for many, many years. Is it? Because obviously, in the other film you just mentioned, he wants to possess a baby.
Yeah.
So in this one, he 6-year-old, but he's like, well, I can't possess these parents or somebody they know, so I'll go into a doll and hopefully possess a child.
Yeah, it's especially odd because if you go back to the first Conjuring movie, the demon just possessed the adult.
Yes, exactly.
The mother just possessed the mom, which I guess you could do that too, but it's now again the demon's like, no, that's a waste of everybody's time. So this doll demon goes nuts, goes berserk. And what the parents do is they go, okay, we're going to get a priest over here. We're going to try to lock this out. We can't have this energy around. So they go into a closet. There's a secret room in the closet, a little room, and they paste Bible pages. They rip out pages from the Bible, and they paste it all over the walls. And then they lock the doll with the demon spirit in the doll in the room full of Bible pages. And that's it. It'll stay in there, and it's in there for like a decade. And the parents don't think about the doll locked in the closet because it's been a decade. And they go, you know what we should do? We should open up our house to an orphanage.
Oh, great idea.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yes. Yes.
It's only been 10 years. I'm sure he's finished reading the walls. Why not? Why not?
Yeah. He hasn't gotten out in 10 years. He's not going to get out when the orphans show.
He knows the Bible off by heart by now.
Right.
Good blow.
And they get all the orphans over to the house because, they lost their daughter 10 years ago. They want some love in the house. So they're going through marital strife, I guess, And so they get all these orphans over. And it's like Michael Jackson's Neverland. It's just a wonderful time. Everybody's having a great time. All these kids are around, all these orphans. And but they go like this.
It's not a demon. It's not a demon. You're ignorant. It's not a demon. You won't get possessed. No. Jesus. Right. Is this one of the bad ones? Like, is this like at the bottom of the? This is the bottom of the barrel Conjuring movie. Is it? Is it like?
I'll tell you why. No, I'll tell you why. No,
they're making mistakes here.
Yes. Okay. Here's
a lot of mistakes here.
You're starting to see some chinks in the armor for sure. You know, this is the vulnerabilities are starting to show, but I still stand by this one because I love the way it wraps up at the end, and we'll get there. I promise. And there is a lot of story in this. Obviously, you know, there's a lot more story beats that I'm explaining to you than even in some of the Conjuring movies. So they get the orphans over, and they tell the orphans, don't go into our dead daughter's bedroom. We left it the way she left it. We're super sensitive about it. Don't go into the dead daughter's bedroom. But when you tell kids not to go into a room, what do they want to do?
They're gonna go in the room.
They're gonna go in the room. They're gonna go in the room. And when they hear mysterious noises coming from the Bible closet, what are they gonna do?
Read the Bible with the demon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they open it up, and then Annabelle just goes nuts. She ends up poking the mother's eye out. She ends up possessing a couple of the kids, I think. You know, there's a kid in a wheelchair that she possesses, but she possesses the kid in the wheelchair, and she's like, I mean, it's good that I'm possessing this kid, but you know, I was hoping not to be in a wheelchair, is what the demon is thinking. So
the doll goes full on puppet master and like goes after like Chucky running around everything. Or
you don't see the doll as animated as Chucky, no, which would have been a step in the wrong direction. No, the doll is still.
Because I haven't seen this doll do anything in any of the times I've seen it. It's just always been there, and it's creepy as hell.
Right.
But it hasn't done anything like moving or besides its head and its eyes or anything. But
yeah, it's more. It more appears to be responsible for what's going on.
Right.
Right, and then also, you know, possessing the kids. So then once it's in the kids' body, it's making the kids do stuff and everything. So it goes on and on doing what demons are going to do, right? And eventually our final girl, the kind of hero orphan of the film, she gets out scot-free. She's okay. And she gets to another orphanage, and she gets adopted. At the end of the movie, she gets adopted. And the lady goes, here, these lovely people are here to adopt you. These are the Higgins. What's your name? And the girl who's getting adopted has decided that now she's going to go by a different name. I think what was her name before? Janice. Janice. You know what name she introduces herself by now? Annabelle. Annabelle. And wait till I tell you this. I'm already getting excited by this. This is why I love this movie. The Higgins that adopt her. You know who the Higgins are? They're the neighbors from the first Annabelle movie that get killed by their daughter, who was in a cult, who went to find the Annabelle doll that the demon that's been living in her for all those years was eventually in. And when the demon knows that they're about to get killed by the cops, goes back into the Annabelle doll. And it all makes sense.
I want to watch this one.
I mean, is that right? Once you get to that, once you get there, you're like, all right, I'm in. You did it. You got me. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to watch Annabelle and Annabelle Creation.
Yes.
In that order.
Yes, because even though technically, like, it's the prequel, so you could watch Annabelle Creation first, it's more satisfying when you see the reveal and you know the answer to the question already, and you're like, oh. You're like,
yeah, but now I know the answer anyway because it's spoiled. But like, I mean, this is. This is the podcast, and this is what I chose. This is my sacrifice. So.
What am I gonna do? Yeah. Like, break down the Conjuring universe with no spoilers and be like, a thing happens, and you should see that thing because it relates to another thing. Like,
oh, good.
Yeah,
good.
I got some good insight. That's some good insight. So then in 2018, we get to The Nun. Now, guess what The Nun is? A prequel to Annabelle Creation. The Nun happens first. Yes. Yes.
Is this like? And this is the thing with The Conjuring. It does the yellow letters going backwards. So it started with episode 4, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Here we are.
And you're like, I don't understand what's going on. And they're like, just see all the movies. Just see everything we put out, and it will kind of make sense. And you're like, all right. Yes, The Nun, most of The Nun takes place in 1952. I mean, some of The Nun takes place in the Middle Ages. So, I mean, talk about a prequel. You're not going to get much further than that. But yes, The Nun is in 1952, making it a prequel to Annabelle Creation, which ended in 1955 or so, which was a prequel to Annabelle, which is 1967, which is a prequel to The Conjuring from 1971, which has a sequel called The Conjuring 2 in 1977. Which is wild when you think about it, because this is 1952. All of this stuff that I'm telling you happens over the course of about 25 years. I mean, and that's a lot of demon stuff to be happening over the course of 25 years. That's crazy. But basically, The Nun, there's this weird monastery. Is that what they're called? Monastery? Monastery.
Monastery.
Monastery? So what's monastery?
Monastery said wrong.
Okay, that could be it.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's like monastery, except you added a letter. Yeah.
In England, we call it a monastery.
Monastery.
But again, I'm the one butchering the American language, so I don't.
No, that's okay. I mean, it's a monastery in Romania, so I would think that they probably go with your pronunciation more than mine.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is it what kind of monastery is this one?
Well, it's haunted. It's a haunted monastery.
Okay.
That's what kind of that's what kind of monastery it is. So let me tell you how this monastery came about. So what happens is this spot has existed since the Middle Ages. And basically this guy, he's obsessed with the occult and Satanism and all this stuff. He is able to take this this spot that he's built. It's not a monastery yet, but he's able to take it. He built it. It's the Middle Ages. And he actually makes a gateway portal to hell. And he gets there, and he gets the gateway portal, and he's like, he looks down to hell. He's like, you're welcome to come up. And this demon named Valak comes up from hell. And the church finds out about this, and they're like, this is insane. Like, you can't have a gateway to hell here. So what they do is they try to fix everything. They clear everything away, right? They seal everything up. They actually get, and this is a good thing to get when you're trying to fight demons. They get some of Jesus Christ's legit shoot blood. Shoot Jesus Christ's blood. They have it in like a little glass thing. And they're able to get it. And I mean, it's one thing to have holy water, but when you have the literal blood of Christ, you fight anything. And they do. And they're able to use that to get Valak back down to hell and to seal up the portal. Yeah, that's how powerful this stuff is. And then now that that's sealed up, they build a monastery around it. So it's surrounded by Jesus and God and nuns. And it's right. And it's like in Romania, like it's way off into the forest. Like it's real hard to get to, like there's a delivery guy that delivers their food like once a week or something like that. But that's pretty much it. They get no visitors. The nuns hang out there silently, not doing anything except making sure that Valak doesn't come back from this gateway to hell that they closed up with the blood of Christ. Does this make sense so far?
Makes sense.
Okay. Now, unfortunately for them, World War II happened. You heard about World War II, right?
Terrible time.
Terrible time. The Germans were dropping bombs. Germans dropped a bomb near the monastery. What does it do? Shakes up the foundation. Guess what opens up on accident?
Yeah.
Portal to hell. They accidentally opened up a portal to hell. And it's like, this is going to be a toughie. This is going to be a toughie. Because before they know it, Valak is back out. And Valak starts just wreaking havoc over these nuns. He's killing all the nuns. He's possessing them and killing all the nuns. And one nun decides that she can't do this. She can't put up with it anymore. Instead of being possessed, she decides to kill herself. The delivery man shows up at this monastery, sees a nun hanging by the neck dead in front of the monastery. He goes, this is very atypical for a monastery. So he gets the hell out of there. And he's right. He gets the hell out of there. And, he calls the church in the Vatican or whatever he calls. And it says, like, you got to get somebody over here. There's crazy stuff happening. So the Vatican sends a specialist over who, like, deals with demons and stuff like that. This, like, I want to say he's a priest, but he's like, he deals with demons. He's like, if somebody's going to take care of a demon from hell, it'll be this guy. We'll send you over. You'll do the thing. And with him, he brings a nun in training, which is actually, she's played by the sister of Vera Farmiga, who plays Lorraine Warren, although there is no connection between the characters. It's just in real life, they're sisters. Just an interesting thing. Also, they kind of look alike, which makes you think maybe there is a connection, but there is not a connection. So don't get confused by that. But they realize pretty quickly that all the nuns in there are possessed, that this is a very, 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 very haunted monastery, and that all the nuns are possessed, and that they are really going to have to get this Valak character back down to hell. Because that's basically the nun that we see everywhere is Valak, and the reason that he's a nun is because of this monastery that he's been, living in, that the portal is under. So, there's lots of hauntings and lots of fightings. At one point, the real creepy thing is that they show, and I don't know if this is real life or not, but they show that there's like a cemetery, and it's got bells at the tombstones and like a string. And they're like, well, what are these bells for? And they said, well, back in the day before they had like, a heart rate monitor or whatever, when they were like, this guy is almost definitely dead. Almost definitely dead. They would bury people with a string in the coffin, and the string was connected to the bell. That way, if they accidentally buried them alive, they could ring the bell right quick, and we could dig them up. And I'm thinking like, okay, if they made that up, that's brilliant. And if they didn't, that's the creepiest thing I've ever heard, that there is that much, there are that many instances of people being buried alive that we've got to figure out some kind of technology to stop all this burying alive stuff. But like, it does add an element because like, you're walking through the tombstone, the cemetery, and you're hearing the bells go. So it's like, oh, this is creepy. And then like at one point, the demon does get the nun in training in a coffin and buries her alive. Thank God for the bell, because then she rings the bell, and the Vatican specialist, that's when they kind of realize like, oh, this is crazy what's going on here. This is nuts. So what they do is they do end up fighting this demon. They find the blood of Christ, and that's super, super helpful when they're fighting this guy. And they get him back down to hell. This entire time, by the way, remember the delivery guy I told you about that like found the nun hanging?
Right.
His name's Frenchie. He's been hanging out with them basically the whole time. Like Frenchie's involved. He's like, I gotta play this thing through. Which it's like you feels like you're underqualified, but still, I mean, you are the one that tipped us off to this. If you want to be here, you can be here. And there is this interaction that Valak and Frenchie have as Valak is being forced down into hell and the portal is closing. And you're like, oh, what's that all about? And then as the movie ends, you see a burn on the back of Frenchie's neck. It's an upside down cross. And you're like, you gotta be kidding me. No. And then they flash forward to what would have been 19 years later, and there's video footage of an exorcism being done to Frenchie. Guess who's doing the exorcism? The Warrens. It's the exorcism that we see at the beginning of the first Conjuring. How do you like that, Drake Maverick, huh?
Wow.
I told you we get there. You're listening to this whole convoluted story about the nun, and you're like, I don't see how any of this is necessary. But boom, Frenchie was right under our nose the whole time.
I'm going to end up watching all of these. I'm really annoyed. I'm going to end up watching. I'm liking that I see the payoffs though, because it means it's actually a decent story and it's like following on. It's making sense. So it's not like, oh look, it's definitely this one. No, it's not. Okay, I'm following it.
Yes. Yes. So then the one I think that you can skip, not because it's necessarily a bad movie, but just because there's not that much mythology to it, is the next movie that came out in 2019, The Curse of La Llorona. La Llorona. That sounds right? La Llorona.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. So The Curse of Go ahead.
I got a question so far.
Yeah.
The Vatican.
Yes.
That they have to go and ask if they have to do can we like stop this demon? And it's like they're always like, oh, I don't know. I'm pondering it over.
Right.
The Vatican always got to ponder it over whether they sanction the extraction of a demon or an exorcism or anything like that.
That's a great question. It does feel like they have to do everything kind of under the radar. It might be like how the government is with UFOs. You know, like they kind of got to do everything under the radar because people get too freaked out if there's a lot of evidence of demons. So maybe they don't want to publicly acknowledge the existence of demons. Although I feel like if they had real evidence and could publicly acknowledge the existence of demons, it would really do a lot to cement the existence of God and Jesus, right? Like if there's demons, there's definitely God. So ultimately, I think it would be good for them, but yeah, I don't know. That's my theory. That's my thought.
They'll just stop. I told you should have read this book.
Yeah. Only thing that was keeping that doll in that room was all them Bible pages on the doors. You know, it worked.
It just seems like every time the Warrens go and say, hey, we need to get rid of this demon and exorcism, and then they're taking the Vatican are always taking their time to think about it. And then they'll go back to where the demon is like, it's too late. We've got to do it.
Yeah, that does happen a lot.
Running theme. Sorry.
No, you're right. Also, you know what?
Curse of Ilya Dragunov. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what's wild though about all these movies is like demons do these things. Like, remember in like the Conjuring 2 when the priest is like holding the cross and he starts bending his fingers all the way back, or when you see all these exorcisms and their arms contort in ways that aren't possible. But then like when the exorcism is over, their arms aren't broken. And you're like, shouldn't your arms be totally broken? Like, how did the demon make it so that you had that level of flexibility? It's wild. It's a little wild.
Very strange.
Yeah. Okay, so the Curse of La Llorona. This is the one that people debate as to whether or not it's really part of the universe because there's not that much Conjuring mythology with it. But I'll tell you why it definitely is. First of all, this one takes place in 1973. So this is gonna flip you out, Drake.
Okay.
Technically, this happens between Conjuring 1 and Conjuring 2. By my math.
Okay.
So it's a sequel to every movie that we've discussed so far, except it's a prequel to Conjuring 2.
Okay.
Right? Okay.
Yep.
All right.
I'm with it.
All right. So
before or after the DeFeos?
The DeFeos, it is before the DeFeos.
Before the DeFeos.
Before right, because the Conjuring 2 starts at the end of the DeFeos. Right.
Yes.
Yes, so I believe this would be right before the DeFeos. But the Warrens also are not involved in this at all. So, you know, the idea that how could they have so much free time that they could do all these cases, they didn't do this at all. This is actually the only thing that draws this in. It's basically the Curse of La Llorona is this curse. It's this, believe it or not, it's a demon. And it's a demon of this woman way hundreds of years ago who drowned her kids and then killed herself. And so what she's working on doing now as a demon, drowning other kids, you know, killing other kids. You know, she's haunting people and trying to kill their kids and whatnot. So they got to call somebody in. And who do they call in? The same father, the same priest that's in the Conjuring movies, specifically in the Annabelle movie. There is a priest that at one point takes possession of Annabelle, the doll. And he said, and I go, okay, well, is this supposed to be the exact same priest or is it the same actor? And this is the one thing that I think, unless I'm missing something, that makes this movie a Conjuring movie. He goes like this. Oh, yeah. There is a case of a haunted doll that reminds me of this. And I go, there it is.
Oh.
There it is.
It's
Same
in.
guy.
Yeah, it's in.
It's in.
It's in.
It's in. So, I mean, it's another demon haunting house movie, but it happens to just exist in the same world as all these other Conjuring movies. But beyond that, it doesn't add to the mythos. So it's not a bad movie at all. It's actually pretty good. Linda Cardellini's in it. She's great. But there's no other story element. So, if you're trying to save time and just need to get filled in on the whole universe, I mean, if you're curious about what the father from Annabelle, and I think he might pop up in Conjuring 2. Maybe he doesn't. I don't remember. But if you're curious about what that guy's up to, then yes, Curse of La Llorona is helpful. So, you be the judge on that one. We got 2 left. Next one up came out in 2019. This one, right after Conjuring 1. Before La Llorona, after Conjuring 1. Annabelle Comes Home.
Oh.
Annabelle Comes Home. Now, for me, I'm not a huge fan of this one. I feel like there's just not maybe as much depth in this one as there was in some of the other movies. Like this is more a straight up kind of scares horror movie, Like it's just you're just in it for the jump scares and stuff like that. But what happened? Oh yeah, and I forgot to tell you too. In Conjuring 2, that's where we also get to meet the Crooked Man in the music box. The big Crooked Man, because I'm jumping ahead of myself, but the Nun is supposed to be getting another movie. And the Crooked Man is also getting his own movie as well. Those are both supposed to be coming out as part. So we're going to get to 10 for sure, but not tonight. Okay. So in Annabelle Comes Home, basically, we do see the Warrens in this one. This is I think the only spinoff that's not called The Conjuring that the Warrens are in. But they're only in the beginning and end. It's kind of a brilliant movie because they take the elements that they've established in all these Conjuring movies and they just make a kind of cheesy teen horror movie with those elements. And also, I think this is a movie about planting the seeds for as many other movies as humanly possible. The premise is the Warrens are going out for a night on the town. Their daughter, who we've met in previous Conjuring movies, she needs to be looked after. So they get a babysitter. Babysitter's friend comes over. And they go like this. Hey, babysitter and babysitter's friend. There is a room in our house. It is full of extremely haunted stuff. Specifically, a doll named Annabelle. Do not go in that room. And don't touch any of the very haunted stuff. And the babysitters go like this. You got it. No problem. Sounds great. Guess what happens when the Warrens leave? Yeah.
They go in the room.
They go in the room. And I mean, the amount of demons that they let out, they tell a story about people getting buried with quarters on their eyes. I can't even remember why. And guess what happens? Dead bodies with quarters on their eyes start walking around the house. It is... I could imagine it would have been terrifying to have been in that house at that time if that is indeed what they saw. But yeah, I mean, that's what it is. There's no that's why there's no like real story to it. It just ends up being, teenagers fighting demons that are all coming from this room. The music box is in there from The Conjuring. Whatever. It's all in there. Good. Right? Thank you very much. I think I got the melody right. It's all in there. And as well as a whole bunch of other trinkets that we haven't seen yet and other stuff that they'll be able to spin off and make movies of. But that's what it is. It's a festival. It's basically a festival of everything that we've seen from the Warrens in these Conjuring movies. It's a fan service. What would happen if all the monsters in the haunted room came alive and attacked teens? And they're like, well, here's exactly what would happen. And that's what this movie is.
So it's just a bunch of teases of little demons, and then like, would you like to see more? Would you like that one more? And then it's a bunch of people are going to go away with like, oh, I like that one. I like that one. I hope they make a movie of that.
Right.
Fan service. Okay, we're making this one. We're making this one. Okay.
Right. And Annabelle is what is centered around it. Right. Annabelle is doing the whole thing. By the way, I don't know if you've ever seen photos of the real Annabelle doll. It's like a Raggedy Ann doll. It's way less scary looking than the actual Annabelle doll. But yeah, that's kind of what this movie is. And I mean, it's cool for what it is. But I remember seeing it in theaters and really feeling like I could take it or leave it. Like I wasn't over the moon for it.
Like it wasn't needed.
It wasn't needed. No, it felt like they were working on other movies, but in the meantime, let's get some cash rolling in. You know, let's bankroll some stuff, and let's prove to the studio that people are still buying into these Warrens, and they are. People are. So you know, God bless them. I hope they make Conjuring movies forever. So if this helped that, let's do it.
The Warrens haven't aged once.
No, not at all.
Not one.
Not at all. I mean, they are just gorgeous, gorgeous demonologists. Yeah. They are
since 2013, not a wrinkle.
No, and I that's the one thing. I wish that what's his name, the Ed Warren. I wish Ed Warren was still alive because I can't imagine. Like Drake Maverick, can you imagine if somebody made a movie called The Drake Maverick Story and you turned it on and Patrick Wilson was starring as you? I mean, how happy would you be?
I would be pretty happy.
Yeah.
I would. You know, it wouldn't be a long film, but it would.
yeah. But handsome. You know, I mean, and that's.
I'll take it.
Yeah. So that brings us, of course, this is actually, I think, one of the longest gaps between Conjuring movies, but that's because they sat out for COVID. That brings us to part 3 of The Conjuring that just came out last Friday in theaters, HBO Max. I watched it on HBO Max. Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It. Now, for me, I felt like basically the story here is this is a real story that the movie is based around, which is a guy murdered his landlord, and he said that, look, my son was possessed by a demon. That demon possessed me. The demon was the one that killed the landlord. The devil made me do it. And this was a real court case. The guy blamed the devil, and the judge decided to give him 20 years. I don't know. But he said the devil made him do it, and that's what this movie is based on. But I felt like they spent almost no time on the guy and the court case and that haunting. Like, it was way more. I felt like this is the movie, you know, when you look at the Fast and the Furious franchise, which I love, by the way, and we've gone over that franchise, but Fast and the Furious 5 is where you realize, like, oh, these aren't just like street racers anymore. I think they might be morphing into superheroes, and I'm okay with it. But it's a different thing now. And everything after Fast and Furious 5, that's why you get to Fast and Furious 8, and they're literally like in cars launching off mountains to stop a Russian in an airplane from blowing up the world and like driving their car on a nuke and stuff like that. But they, yeah, it was great. It was great, but it transitioned gradually, right? You just have to recognize when that transition happened because they did it over the course of movies. But you get to part 5. And for me, part 5, that's the first movie that The Rock is in. That's when they go to Brazil. That's when it's like, oh, okay. So they're like superheroes who drive cars. They're not just people selling electronics illegally in street racing. Okay, I'm down. I'm still here for it. And I felt like this Conjuring movie really became, oh, so Lorraine Warren is like a magic lady. She's like a magical lady who lives in a ghost world and stuff like that. Because I felt like, you know, I was actually really interested because I love the idea of the courtroom drama mixed with the haunted house movie. That sounds awesome to me. But when they're like, but what if we spent most of the movie in an underground Satanist lair? And you're like, what are you talking about? What? Huh?
Right.
What?
It just had nothing to do with what I expected. Like the first 30 minutes, I was hooked because I'm like, God, this court case is going to be, it's going to be the Warrens trying to give evidence about demonology and everything like that, and trying to prove that it's real and examples of it being real and whatever. But it just went they went off and did their own thing. And then at the end, it was like, oh, by the way, you know that guy? Yeah, he got 20 years. Let out 5.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen The Exorcism of Emily Rose. I remember that being a complete court case, scenario, and it was back and forth, like stories and everything. But like that's what I expected it to be. But it just went. The first 30 minutes, I was really in, and then it just took it away from it. And I'm like, why are we here? Like this is.
Yeah, it was weird, and you didn't see it coming. I felt like either. If you go back and think about the movie, it's like they're on the right line. Like they go, like, okay, we got to prove this guy was really haunted. You know, we see the exorcism with his kid. It's a crazy ass exorcism. It's a real good opening, and then they go like, oh, let's check under the house, and there's no way that the real life Lorraine Warren was that fearless of rats. She's just crawling around with rats. And I'm like that would be enough for me. Like, no, you know what could have done it? There's a lot of rats under this house. And that's scary enough for me. That's like Willard. Like I don't want anything to do with all those rats. But she crawls through those rats, and what she finds is a little satanic statue. And they go, oh, this must be it. And they go like, oh yeah. Whenever there's a satanic statue there, it means there's a curse. So the house was cursed, and that's what happens. And instead of going like, oh, let's watch them take this satanic statue and present it to the judge, they spend the whole movie hunting down the satanic statue. Like, well, who made this statue and why did they put it there? And you're like, oh, so this is just about you hunting and this is where it was one thing when it was ghosts and demons, but people who can travel interdimensionally or whatever, I can't get on board with. We're not there in this universe. You haven't set that up. Like because they see this like ghost Satanist lady in their house. And I'm like, oh, I guess this is like a Satanist from 100 years ago that's haunting them. And then like later in the movie, you find out like, no, she's alive now. And you're like, what? So she can just show up as a living person? And just like be in other people's houses, and that's where I got like, this doesn't feel like it's existing in the same universe, unless the universe is, like I said, shifting, and the Warrens are becoming superheroes. Which, if that's the case, I'll watch the Warrens as superheroes. I'm okay with it. But yeah, so they find that, and then there's a scene where like real creepy stuff starts happening in their house, and they realize that they have one of those statues, and I don't know why this little thing bugged me, but they find the statue was delivered via flowers in a vase, and they're like, I'm sure it's in that vase because the flowers are dead, and they just got here yesterday, and they break the vase, and there's the satanic statue, but the satanic statue, while big enough to fit in the vase, was bigger than the opening of the vase.
Yeah.
Yes. So they would have literally
this big V thing.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have been able to get in there.
Yeah, they literally would have. Maybe it's like the movie Ghost, where they're sculpting the vase around it. Yeah. Around it, but they would have literally had to craft the vase around this satanic statue in order to do it. So it really is. They're not really following this court case at all. They're more following the satanic adventures of Ed and Lorraine Warren. And yeah, like the stuff in the wood. Yeah, it just felt like we kind of really got away from Lorraine being affected by this stuff, because this movie takes place in 1981. Okay, so this is the latest movie. This is a sequel to all of it, which means that in I'm going through all my notes here. In 1971, 10 years before this, Ed is like, I don't know if I want my wife doing this stuff anymore. It deeply affects her. 10 years later, he's got her doing way worse stuff than she was doing in the first one. So it felt to me like we had lost that thing where Lorraine's got these like psychic powers but doesn't like to use them because they hurt her, and more like Lorraine is like Professor X. She's like Magneto. Like she's got crazy psychic abilities and she can shapeshift as well. You know, like it was just a different
She's
deal.
reenacting murders. She's doing like it was so off brand.
Yes. I thought so too. Although I did like the big Andre the Giant corpse that was chasing him around. Like just the giant, bloated, like 8 foot tall corpse that was just like, like...
Yeah. When they were in the woods and she comes to the edge of the cliff and then there's this ghost hand that drags her down, but like there's nobody there. Ghost kind of.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, it was too much, I think. I just wish that had kept on track with the court case instead of where they went.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a lot. It was muddled. It felt muddled. It felt, you know, and that's not usually. There are other movies in the Conjuring universe that are muddled, but these are. I always thought these Conjuring movies were supposed to be like your cornerstones. Like these are the movies that hold up the entire universe. Like, you know, like you can have kind of a Doctor Strange movie that doesn't make a lot of sense, or you can do an Ant-Man movie that's just kind of like meh. But your Avengers movies have got to be 10 out of 10 every time in order to hold the whole universe up, right?
Right.
So yeah, I kind of felt the same way. But I did, and did you watch it through? Was there a post-credit scene? I didn't watch through the credits. I didn't
see a post-credit scene.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't look for one either, though.
Yeah.
I'm guilty. Well, I did it with the other two, and there wasn't one, so I'm like, oh, there's not going to be one in this one.
Right. Yeah, I'm assuming there's not.
When they go into the room with all the artifacts from different cases, I'm waiting for something every time, and nothing happens. And like maybe that's the love of maybe that's the good thing about them, because I'm like, something's gonna happen in this one. Nope. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm gonna watch the next one because something's gonna happen in that one. That's for sure.
Yeah. You think, what do you team me up for the next one? Nothing. Okay.
But I will say, I felt like I was back home with The Conjuring because they took that Satan statue, and where did they put it? Right there on the Ed and Lorraine shelf in the Ed and Lorraine room full of potential movies. And they were like, don't forget, we got a whole room full of stuff that we can make movies of. And apparently that's what they're doing. I mean, I would imagine there'll be a Conjuring 4. You know, they got years and years of stuff that they could do. I hope that it's less sort of superhero-y. You know, I hope that it's less fantastical and a little bit more grounded in reality. Like, this was the first Conjuring movie where I was like, I felt like this was the biggest stretch of based on a true story. Because it's like, there's a little bit was based on a true story, but they were not running around in real life under a farm trying to destroy a Satanist altar. Like, that never happened in real life. Ed and Lorraine, and I would have to have a conversation, I guess, with maybe their kids or their whoever. They're passed away, unfortunately. But they didn't do that. That didn't happen. It's never happened to anybody.
Well, it may have been a change of director, because this wasn't directed by James Wan. This was the first one he hadn't directed in the Conjuring movies. So
I wonder if he's going to watch this one and be like, nah, got to go back to work. Got to get back for really Conjuring 4. Yeah, I got to do it. I'm sure they'll make a Conjuring 4. All they've announced so far is they're going to make a second Nun movie, because I guess the statistic is that the Nun is actually the highest grossing movie in the entire universe that we've talked about. The Nun made the most money. So they're going to do another Nun movie, and then they're doing, like I said, a Crooked Man movie, which is the guy that is in that music box in Conjuring 2 that comes to life. So yeah, we'll see if that works. But I hope that we've shed some light on this. I feel like we've accomplished something here, Drake.
I'm interested in seeing the ones I haven't seen. I will say that. I thank you for that.
That's good.
For now adding 12 hours, 15 hours to my working week.
Yeah. And you only had to give me 90 minutes to sell you on it. So
that's fine.
I
thought you did it. I thought you did a tremendous job tying in everything that I haven't seen.
Okay.
So thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. That's good.
Appreciate that.
We have a handful. I feel like everybody was wrapped up in all these movie descriptions because the super chats, we got a handful of them. And the one rule on Sam Roberts Now is that we read every super chat. So if you would indulge me here, Drake Maverick, I have to read some of these super chats. If there has been something as you've been watching that you feel like absolutely needs, I saw a lot of Doug Bell shout outs in the chat as we went. Doug Bell is not here, will not be here, will never be here. So I don't know what to tell you. But if there is something that you feel like needs to be said on the air, super chat it in. The one rule of Sam Roberts Now is every super chat gets read. Not Sam Lehman. Hell yeah, great guest host. That's you, Drake Maverick.
I'll take that. Thank
you. Christopher Pinky Schultz, whole life in Rhode Island. This, quote, based on a true story garbage. There's no fucking ghosts, ghost hunters on the air for 25 years. Best equipment, no ghosts. He's just yelling. There's no ghosts. No, there are no ghosts.
Yeah, but we're suspending our disbelief here.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I'm okay because there's so many like YouTube videos and stuff like debunking a lot, even the stuff that's based on a true story. Like a lot of it has been debunked, but that doesn't bother me about the movies. I don't need it to be true.
No.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I like that they do them based around mythologies of real life stories.
Yes.
And then go from there.
Yes.
So
yeah, me too.
So it feels real. And
yes.
If you put based on a true story in your opening Star Wars credits, you're more into it.
Yeah. I mean, look at Fargo.
This really happened.
Look at the movie Fargo.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Come on.
I mean, yeah. The true story of Texas Chainsaw Massacre has literally nothing to do with what happens in the movie.
Nothing.
Yeah. When the true story of Texas Chainsaw Massacre is based on the same true story as Silence of the Lambs, you're like, they couldn't be any more different. How could these both be based on the same thing? Pinky Schultz also says, realtor is not a word, realtor is. Well, I mean, if we've learned anything tonight, it's that I love adding letters to words. It's something I like. I think most words could use another vowel or two, and I throw them in. That's something I like to do. Not Sam's Grim Reaper, Happy Lonely Friday Night, Sammy Boy and Drake. Come on, man. There you go. Look, I feel like they're embracing you as part of the family.
Drake. Come on,
man. Not Sam Lehman. Do we know if there was a making of La Llorona part of the Conjuring verse? There was never any promotion around it, so I don't see a reason. Yeah, they didn't promote it as part of the Conjuring universe, which is weird because I feel like that would, get people going. But yeah, I don't know. And finally, last one is from Jeff Johnson that says, "Come on, Sam, you forgot the movie that started it all. My Ass is Haunted," starring Belladonna. I don't think that has anything to do with the Conjuring.
Oh my God.
I don't think that has anything to do with the Conjuring universe at all. But Jeff Johnson, more power to you. Drake Maverick, I appreciate you hanging out. I hope I will see you this weekend when I'm down there for NXT TakeOver in your house.
Potentially, if they give me the nudge.
All right.
I'll, yeah. If I'm not there, I'll be watching at home.
Yeah, on Peacock, right? On Peacock.
On the Peacock Network, live on the Peacock Network.
Live on Peacock. Yeah, I love it.
NXT TakeOver in your house this Sunday.
Yes, very, very exciting. Yeah, I appreciate you, Drake, and maybe next time we do one of these movie breakdowns, you'll be back.
Yeah, or I'll know about all of the films.
I mean, I kind of enjoy, by the way, explaining it to somebody. Like, that's part of a kick for me. Like, when you say, well, why does this make sense? And it doesn't, and I have to kind of figure out how to sell you on this. I enjoy that part of the process.
Okay.
So, well, thanks for coming on. Thank you
My
all
pleasure.
for
Thank you.
tuning in and watching. Make sure you hit like. You know, we can get those likes up a little bit. I'm seeing them right now. We can get the likes up. Subscribe to the channel. Turn the bell on. Watch everything that I post. Do whatever you got to do. And you got 5 styluses. You might as well use them. We'll see you next time. Have a good night, everybody.